Paul Flanagan joins me today. He won 2 All-Irelands with Clare hurlers before his recent retirement, and now he works as a mental performance coach as well as his teaching job. How are you doing, Paul?
Good, Kevin. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Things are going well.
Have you adjusted to life yet now as a former intercounty player?
Yeah, it's funny when you say it. It does take a bit of adjustment, to be fair. I think it's great. I'm really enjoying the autonomy that it gives you to go and, do different things and even work-wise do different things. But it does take it is a bit of a change. I won't lie. I think the biggest thing is probably, the connection to the guys that you're with 4 or 5 times a week and the difference that is, and to try and take that and go and structure your own week from now on. So it's I know it sounds a little bit strange when you say that, but those training sessions on a Tuesday, Friday, and when you're into a game or training on a Sunday morning, they're real anchors in your week, which are brilliant. But yeah, that's certainly a change now.
It's kind of your social circle as well, isn't it? Like, I know you would have came through with a lot of those lads at underage level, and as an intercounty player, generally you're not going to be going out as much or doing different things like other people would. So they are your social outlet as well as obviously your sporting career.
Yeah, for sure. And they're the guys that you're meeting for a coffee, and it's often those informal chats about, how we're going to get better, what's going on at the moment, what's going on with you. They're very informal, and very often they tend to circle back around hurling or Gaelic games quite often. And in some ways that's great, because it's a real lease of life, and it's a totally different scene to what you might do in your day job or in other parts of your life. So yeah, it's certainly a change, but I'm enjoying the flip side of it as well.
And to go out, having been part of another All-Ireland win with Clare, that's obviously a special way to do it, to go out in style that way.
Yeah, it's massive. It's the culmination of 4 or 5 years work, and culmination of a real tight collective that have come together over those 4 or 5 years. And I think Brian deserves an awful lot of credit for what he did in terms of trying to build that and put really good people in amongst it then to support it. And essentially, you're always moving in the right direction if you can combine those two things together. If you can get good people in the room and then support them with really good people as well. And I think there was probably a squad there that was a nice blend of youth and experience, and both were driving each other equally, I think, for a finish, which was, it was absolutely magic to come out with a win. There's a lot of teams that perform extremely well throughout the season, and you mightn't get a win, and we were that team for a good few years. And it is nice. It is nice to be able to I suppose copper fasten the work that you've put in over a few successive seasons to come out and get a medal for the effort that's gone in.
Just so if people aren't aware, just to give a bit of background in your career. So obviously from the Ballyea club, came through, as I mentioned, a golden generation probably of Clare players from your underage teams. You captained the minors to Munster title, would have been 2010, and then won a couple of under-21 All-Irelands as well, the second one as captain, and you were on the matchday panel then for the Clare All-Ireland win in 2013 under Davy Fitz. So that was like the early days of your career, and then would have been on the Clare panel then for the bulk of the period in between. Probably would have endured a few frustrating days, and you had injuries and different things like that in and out of matchday panels. It took you until you were 28 then before you made your first championship start for Clare. So there was quite the journey in between your early days as a Clare hurler and then actually making your first championship start at 28 years old for Clare.
Yeah, it's mad when you hear it back. If you were to say it to somebody, they'd probably ask you to do a double take and question you to wonder, is that actually true? I think there's north of 2,000 days in there somewhere, 2,300 days or something like that. Which look, when you look at it, it's a tough place to be. It's a tough scenario to be in, but at the same time, I was part of really good squads. Clare probably went through a fallow period of not getting anything out of those years. And I would speak for like an awful lot of guys that are when you're trying to edge into a starting team, it's probably the most difficult position that you can be in, because you're constantly trying to get yourself ready, constantly revising in your own mind what you need to improve on, probably overthinking an awful lot of the time because you're not getting that traction of playing on the pitch. And on the flip side of it, Kevin, even when I moved past that period and I was 28, I was probably looking at it a little bit differently, saying, look, whatever I learn, I'll accept where I'm at. I'll actually try and improve by picking up those small things on pitch, and maybe dial down a little bit the volume on overthinking and circling around your own thoughts and trying to find answers all the time. And I think that was probably that was the tail of my career. I was, you were experiencing different setups, but I just wasn't getting in, and I wasn't doing enough myself as a player to get in. I often think actually it's a player that is trying to edge his or her way into a starting squad that you actually have to do more in order to justify that performance. And that probably needs to be repped out, or needs to be consistent over 2 or 3 years before you might even get that full break, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, and it's a great example for players to stick at, because obviously the easy thing would have been to step away. I know you would have had a knee injury that needed surgery maybe around 2017, 2018, and like you were getting appearances in the league, you were getting game time and stuff, but that overthinking thing, just reading through a couple of interviews you've done in the past, is that something you were almost trying to do too much, and you were trying to nail absolutely everything, and then possibly overthinking would have inhibited your performance a little bit?
Yeah, and I think sometimes when you're not playing or you're not experiencing that time on the pitch, you can be quick to criticize yourself, I think, and quick to be harsh on yourself to try and figure out why is this not the case. And subsequently, actually, when as time moved on and I got onto the pitch that little bit more, it nearly vanished. It was as if I was trying to figure out different strategies because I was on the field at that time, and you're thinking about oppositions and thinking about different plays and thinking about how you should move in certain scenarios. But when I look at myself then, I would have thought, well, that's the stuff I should have been thinking about at the start.
Yeah,
They're the things as players we should be thinking about, and they're the things we should be really investing into. Good things will come out of that because you're focused on your play and that flow of your play, and you're trying to essentially you're breathing through the game, if that makes sense, and you're actually enjoying playing the game. And like we can all dial back on the 1%ers and really narrow into them, but essentially they're there, and no more than myself with mental performance, like they're there to try and actually support you to be your best on the pitch. And that's something it definitely probably took a bit too long to figure out.
but it probably sent you on a journey just in terms of your own mindset and understanding this side of things, and obviously now working with athletes and helping them. And I'm sure a lot of the players you would work with now, or athletes you work with, you probably see a bit of yourself maybe 10 years ago or whatever in them. Like, is that something that without having to go through those battles and stuff like that, you probably wouldn't be in this line of work now?
Yeah, it was the hard road to it, I suppose. And to be honest with you, I just had to figure out why this was happening and why this was the case. I'd be a bit like that anyway, that I'd like to understand something and then be able to implement it myself. And so when I went back to university and I was reading a lot more on it, and I was, stuck into podcasts left, right, and center, and trying to figure out what aligned with me and what was maybe happening, it started to make a bit more sense what I was maybe dealing with. And I think that's the trickiest thing sometimes, is that you actually have a sense that there's something a small little bit off, but you don't understand it, and you're kind of shy to put yourself out there to say, you know what, I could do with a bit of support on this. And that was something I got a bit better at later on in my career, that you were actually reaching for support and trying to make yourself better that way. And that was probably a more positive way of viewing it than earlier on.
Yeah, and it must be said, you were still playing at elite level. You were playing in one of the strongest teams in the country with some of the best players that we've seen. But I was just reading some interviews you were talking about where it might have been around the 2015 league. I think you played against Kilkenny. You might have been taken off early, and then there was a game against Tip as well where you wouldn't have had a great game on John McGrath. And can you just describe when you're talking about what was going through your head in those games? What kind of stuff would you be talking about when you think back to those games?
Yeah, it's funny. I can remember them pretty clearly, like, because they were such a visceral part of my career. Because essentially, that was start and end of pretty much every season up to that. That you might get a couple of games, you get a chance to play on maybe a bigger name like John McGrath, and then I always found, Kevin, that I'd put a huge amount of weight on that, and I'd put a huge amount of expectation on it, and I'd say, look, if I can do this, there's a chance that it'll lead to this. And they say, like, with performance, expectation and consequence are two things that we actually want to try and avoid quite a bit, because they tend to move you towards the external and the outcome all the time. Whereas the beauty of the thing is in the trenches, trying to actually figure out how you're gonna defend against this guy, and even if he does get one or two balls off you, that you're going to respond and you're going to come back against him and demonstrate your own capacity and demonstrate your own skill. Whereas for me, if one or two things went astray, it tended to snowball quite a bit, and I was left wondering, saying, "Oh, this is another chance gone now, and this is another one gone." And before you know where he is, he is 4 or 5 points scored, and that's the day done. And then there were times that I suppose maybe some people recognized it. I think some people actually, I would say maybe some people closer to home recognized it. Some people in Ballyea probably recognized it more so than people in inter-county squads, because time moves very quick and managers move quick, and they're looking to see how they can put together the best team for the summer. And that makes sense to me as well. Like, I understand that. But it was a tricky place to be in. But those were the immediate thoughts that I would have had in those games.
People, like, I'm just reading Richie Hogan's book at the moment, and he was talking about the initial battles that he had to get onto the Kilkenny team when he was maybe 20, 21. And obviously he was the great white hope coming through his underage team's Kilkenny, and he had that level of expectation on him. But even still, the talent he had, he was talking about similar mental struggles, overthinking things, feeling he had to do everything when he came on. So people might find it surprising, but at intercounty level, even the elite players are still struggling with this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think it's something, look, everybody needs support in certain angles of where they're at. And because you're operating in a pretty intense environment. Now, you might only perform 10% of your week or 10% of your year, if you put it, but for that 10%, you want it nailed and you want to actually give your best. So it's a case of, for the other 90%, what are the things I can do that'll help me? I actually think it's interesting. I think that as an inter-county game, and you'll hear that adage quite a bit, that it's a young man's game or it's a young girl's game. I actually think that developing that level of game intelligence over a few years, where we see players nearly emerging now into their mid-20s, having a body of work under them and having a body of experience under them, I think that actual game intelligence is proving as much value, together with the physical, I suppose, attributes that are worked on, so that are so important to what players do. But I think the game intelligence may be leading them to break through a little bit later.
That's an interesting point, yeah. And just going back to, say, the COVID year, when you did make it onto the team for your first championship start, like, for some people, COVID around training was a blessing, really, and you were able to sort out different niggles and things like that within your own game. Like, was that the case for you? Did it give you a bit of a new lease of life?
Yeah, it was a little bit different for me in that for the first COVID, I was renting in Limerick at the time, so I was able to train away by myself. But I actually wasn't involved in any Clare setup during the first COVID.
Okay.
So we went back in to play with the club, played those few months with the club, and then I got a phone call. I was on the way to Milton Malbay, and Brian rang, and that was wasn't really expecting that. Even though the club side of things, I'd enjoyed the summer with the club, but so yeah, then I was thrust back into the Clare setup for that winter championship, and that's how it kind of accelerated really quickly. I probably did allow. Then there was the second COVID, and I was at home here in Ballyea for that second COVID, and that was a really it was a really great opportunity to train. Like myself and Tony Kelly and Jack Brown were able to train as much as we possibly could. And Tony, you'd learn a lot from him. Like he never sees training as a load. Like he never sees it as that it's taxing or it's huge effort. He actually just sees
Yeah.
it as in with enthusiasm, where he's sending you a WhatsApp or looking for you at a particular time and wondering, are you going to go? And if you're not going to go, he's going to do it anyway. So
Yeah.
you might as well go and try and improve yourself. And that's what we found during the during that second COVID break. I think when I look back on it now, it was pure training in that you were just down there at your local field with your boots and your hurley and your helmet and a stopwatch, and it's kind of hard to it was very pure. Like it seemed almost so pared back that it couldn't be real, but it was a massive part of just giving us both, I think, a bit of traction, even though I was definitely trying to hang on to his coattails to move with him, which was brilliant as well.
It's a great image of that, the tree down there in Bally's pitch, just doing runs and stuff. And would he even look at a tough running session like you're doing, just a tree there? Would he even look at that as an enjoyable thing, not necessarily a tough session to get yourself through?
Yeah, there are conversations we'd have quite a bit actually. It's in around like what's on the session, what's it going to be like, how tough is it, what are maybe other players or other teams doing that would replicate this. They're the type of things. But I actually think when you're invested in your game and you're invested in what you want to get better at, they're great conversations to have, because you're more focused on the detail of doing it right, and you're more focused and invested in the actual process of doing it. And
Mm.
like we found, we used to come away from those sessions and go, yeah, that was good. Even something simple like that, say, yeah, look, bit of work done there, that was good. And you just start compounding that over the few weeks together, whether that was a mix. And it was great. Like you'd combine a bit of skill, you'd combine a bit of touch work and ball work, and then you get straight into your runs or whatever needed to be done. Sometimes it felt actually the sessions were more compacted, but you were getting as much benefit as you were for training with an hour with the county, or an hour and a half with maybe your inter-county team. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. All right.
Mm. And obviously, you went into studying, as you said, that you went to UL and you started studying mental performance and mental skills and health. Was that with the view of going into this coaching after you finished playing, or was an aspect of it that you wanted to help your own performance?
Yeah, I think initially it was simply just to help my own performance and to see could I understand it a bit more. And then I just thought I was thinking to myself that, look, this is something I'm really enjoying. And even when I went back for the full year in UL, something I really loved and really enjoyed. And I didn't know where that was going to go, or if it was what form it was going to take, or what would be involved in it. I just knew that it was a space that I really enjoyed, and it was something that I felt I could get better at, if that makes sense, and try to improve at. In some ways, nearly like starting again with a topic or a passion that you have no idea about, but you know that you're just going to keep following it and see where it goes. So yeah, that was the initial take with it.
And were there certain elements that you brought into your own game or just your own life and your own training that helps you on the pitch? Like, a lot of people who are interested or who are listening here will be players, and they'll be interested in learning the kind of things that you would have worked on. I know it's different for everybody, but just to give an outline on stuff that you would have found that helped you, what kind of stuff are you talking about?
Yeah, because I would have had maybe coaches that would have come in and before and said to me, or said to in group settings, look, this is self-talk. This is a great skill that you should use. And I would have heard that with certain coaches or certain people that might have come in to talk to us. But the biggest thing and the biggest learning that you can get from something like that, and I would think maybe it's from a teaching background or it comes from that educational side. I think in order for you to use it, you need to understand it, and you actually need to understand the full back end of how this works and how it doesn't work and how it can work for you and work against you. And so that was something that I was really inquisitive about and something I wanted to know more about. So once I was doing all those readings and figuring out the back end of things and why self-talk, for instance, or visualization or meditation actually worked, then it started to click that it could be the slightest change in approach that you would take to put it into your week. Like a simple thing, even when we take something like meditation, which has unbelievable positive responses for people in terms of bringing down their in terms of regulating their emotions and increasing their concentration, and has numerous benefits for what they do in their performance or in their work. But adherence is a really tricky part of it, like actually sticking to the process. And if you struggle to adhere to things, that mightn't be a strategy that will work for you at all. So I just find there's small little nuggets within each skill, within each skill and within each part of elements of mental performance that link up together. And that was something that probably drove me on a little bit more to want to know and want to understand it, to be able to benefit others,
And I'd imagine then you're sort of a regular on the Clare team then when you're 30, and you had a great year getting nominated for the All-Star in 2022. Was there a big difference in terms of how you were approaching your own training, how you were thinking going onto the field versus a couple of years earlier?
Yeah, I think things were a lot more measured. I think I was putting a big emphasis on my energy, and I was putting a big emphasis on trying to actually create the environment around myself to be the best I could be. So I was living at home at the time, just eating really well. I had a routine job that was a routine job in that teaching is, allows you to be routine, and not in a negative connotation at all. And like it allowed me to be able to structure my week. So that was really positive. And then I was going into training every night to look to see could I improve with full energy. And I think that was something that mightn't have been there a few years previous to that. So, and that took being selfish, like it took really focusing on your sleep and focusing on your recovery. They're all the simple things, but for me, it was something that was a little bit in tandem maybe up to that point, but something I really loved nailing, across those few seasons. And I really saw it as I love the daily grind of those things, of actually just trying to nail those things bit by bit in order to go to the pitch and be able to express yourself fully and get actual feedback then. Because I think sometimes you can go to the pitch or you can go to wherever you're performing, and if you're only at 60% physically, or if you're only at 60% mentally, then it's actually hard to get feedback of where you're at to improve, if that makes sense. Whereas, if you're in, you're at full sleep capacity and you're really looking after every element of your lifestyle and so on, then where there's no excuse. Then where it needs to improve on the pitch and what tweaks you can make to improve.
Definitely. Just one thing as well during COVID, I forgot to mention, you were talking a bit about getting faster as well during COVID and really working on your speed. What kind of stuff would you have been doing around then? Was it those sessions with Tony and Jack on the pitch in Ballyea, or what kind of stuff would you have been actually working on that you did that you found helped you get faster, sort of late 20s, early 30s?
Yeah, I think there was probably a combination of work going on there. There was some really positive linking with athletic development or strength and conditioning coaching that was going on, that was uh, assisting what I was doing. Like it's interesting. Even if I go back 5 or 6 years ago, I remember I met a physio at one point, and they were like, "Jesus, you have a really long tendon between your Achilles and your calf, and it's like longer than normal," which would kind of indicate that that you would have a significant bounce there and an ability to accelerate pretty quickly. So I remember having this chat, and it was something that came back to me, and I was like, okay, let's see, can we put a bit of emphasis on speed? And I think one difficulty actually for intercounty players is performing at maximal speed, but actually using it as practice, because oftentimes you go into a training session and you'll try to max out on a particular sprint. It could be over 30 or 40 meters, but it could be for one rep or 2 reps, and that's it, done. Whereas I found when we were down at the pitch, it was during COVID, we had a bit more space, and you could build yourself up to that session and really attack the speed. And I know it sounds bizarre really when we say it, but because of the routine of an intercounty schedule, it could be Tuesday, Friday, Sunday. Sometimes that doesn't align exactly with how your body feels to go at max speed. So that was
Yeah.
definitely another thing, just actually practicing speed and practicing going flat out, and then taking full recovery afterwards to get yourself right. So yeah, it's just it was something that I gradually noticed then was improving. And particularly when you've Tony alongside you, it's a really good barometer to know, okay, am I actually improving, or is he just having me on? But yeah, that was a good indicator.
Yeah, and you could see yourself improving in the runs. Imagine as well, you were kind of, if you're getting a bit closer to Tony, then you're operating at a decent enough level.
Yeah, and the other side of it is, for anyone that's training, or for anyone that's training with their club, or training with training on their own, that idea of actually training with somebody and training to try and improve with somebody, I think there's huge value in that as well, both mentally and physically, that you feel that they're like a bungee cord, that they're actually dragging you along a little bit, and sometimes maybe you're dragging them along some at odd stages. Very little in my case.
And just to talk about, say, your teaching career, I know you're in 𝐒𝐭𝐚𝐲, and you would have had a lot of very talented Limerick hurlers go through your hands there, and obviously they went on to have the success they had with Limerick. What was the coaching like in the school there? I actually went to UL myself, and I remember at the time when I was there, it was like the first batch of great players were coming through, like Shane Dowling, were all coming out of 𝐒𝐭𝐚𝐲, but the production line in that school seems to be just constant, and they're rolling out, like I said, Cathal O'Neill in recent years. So it must be a great opportunity to work with high level players in that school as well, and to see them then burst onto the intercounty scene.
Yeah, it is, and it's a massive privilege to be able to work with younger players in general, and especially younger players that are ambitious to do well. I'm over the under 15 team in the school at the moment, and I'm loving it. I'm really enjoying it. Like, you go back to that time where hurling or football or camogie is really just, it's a game that you love to play, love to get better at, and you have that ambition to improve, and it's a really nice sweet spot as a person or as a player to be in. So yeah, like we've had a huge amount of guys through our school reach. It's probably a combination of students going in there that really want to improve themselves and want to do well and are ambitious to do well, and also an excellent coaching team that, through the effort of teachers giving their spare time, and are willing to and passionate to actually put in that effort. That's the combination there that works really well. And you're always onto a winner when you can actually, when you have people with good coaching knowledge and good interest in it, that combined with players that are ambitious and want to do well. Like, even I remember Cathal, I was reffing a blitz in first year, and Cathal was playing midfield in the blitz, fresh out of coming in from primary school. And just to see those players come through the school and see them represent the school so well, it's amazing to see. And it's great that I would say that you can have a small little impact maybe on what they do and how they view things. And that's what I find with the under 15 bunch that I have at the moment. It's more a case of just seeing, right, see where we can bring it, see where you can impact on a little bit of development for them, and let them take the reins then after that.
How do you find coaching underage compared to, like, you probably haven't done much at senior level because you've been still playing so much, but say compared to being in a senior environment, the things that coaches will say, the things that managers can say to players, and then when you're in a group with younger lads, is there much of a difference in terms of what you feel you can say to players or how you want to actually coach them? I'm just interested in how you approach that, coming from your background of playing inter-county for so long.
Yeah, 100%. I think the combination of you do have to be pretty measured with younger players, in that I'm always conscious that, look, this is big picture, it's development. We're trying to improve the skills of these players and actually give them a feel for the game and a feel for what it's like to be in a positive environment and an actual environment that allows them to improve, whether they're starting on the team or whether they're a really valued member of the panel. And I think that's so important. You don't foster that just by saying it either. You actually have to live that and kind of implement it. And that might be a case that you get one or two bad beatings in a game. You kind of just have to take that on the shoulder and go, right, okay, yeah, but I'm trying to implement something a little bit bigger here. There's it's not the Premier League where you're under pressure from outside stakeholders. That's not the case. Like, so you might as well just try and improve those players for the good of it. Yeah, to be honest, that probably does come from seeing the big picture, seeing where skills can be impacted at senior inter-county level, and really filtering that back down to what does that look like for a 15 or 16-year-old. I think the major challenges that I would see sometimes are their schedules are quite busy, and just getting that time to actually practice, like getting the time to practice freely and giving your 20 minutes at home to actually try and improve on certain things and see that as a part of your game. Whereas sometimes it can be pretty full on to get from here to there to everywhere, and that's a challenge for young people. It's a challenge for their parents as well. So yeah, it's something I'm enjoying, trying to make the main things, I suppose. Practice, improvement, enjoy it. They're certainly the main things.
For people who aren't aware, you do a lot of analysis as well on 𝐒𝐿, some of the live hurling coverage. So when you're going from, like, say, playing obviously with club and county, and then you're teaching in school, but you're coaching hurling as well, and then you're analysing it on TV as well. So how do you find balancing all those sort of things? Do you ever get to the stage where you're just sick at looking at hurling or talking about it, or is it something that you actually find complements each other well?
Yeah, no, I it's strange actually. I actually don't get too sick of hurling at all. I'm probably actually, even having stepped back from Clare this year, I'm probably at a stage where I'm like actually enjoying going to games, and I'm enjoying seeing matches. And I've heard of certain players that might step away from the game and they actually hate it, and they kind of might be hurting a little bit for a period of time, which is very normal as well. And it's tough to go to games. Whereas maybe for me, I was probably involved in it so much at school and doing a little bit of coaching and a little bit of that in between, that it's been normal enough. And even with 𝐒𝐿, like I've done quite a bit with them over a stint of about 10 years. So what I love about 𝐒𝐿 work on a lower budget, but the people that you meet are some of the most passionate about what they do, and what they produce is exceptional. And you're sitting in the car on a Sunday and you're driving to a particular venue, and you're going working with those people because they're passionate about the games and they actually love watching the players that play the game. So it's hard not to be enthusiastic about going into that environment to work, and that's something that I really enjoy.
Just to touch on as well the mental performance coaching, and say the kind of athletes you work with now? Is it a wide range of athletes? I'd imagine obviously a lot of them would know you from GA circles, so I'd imagine there's a good bit of interest there. But what kind of other sports would you be working with, and what does that work look like?
Yeah, there's probably a good mix in terms of individuals. An awful lot of individual sports actually can be quite taxing mentally, and can take a little bit of structuring in order for the person to improve at what they do. So, sports like golf and dancers and musicians and so on. They in terms of what they do, it's quite challenging, and it's quite challenging on them cognitively and physically and everything. But yeah, so that would be one particular cohort, and then team wise, it's predominantly GA and rugby based for the moment, and I'm enjoying seeing the mix of both environments. Say a rugby environment would be one that I wouldn't have been in, and I've got the opportunity with this year with the work with Munster Rugby, with their national talent squad to really explore that a little bit more. And it's phenomenal, like what you learn from both, and see what you can add to what's going on there as well. So that's been really interesting. And then, Kevin, it can be a real mix. It can be organizations that are looking to get better and looking to sharpen up their mental processes or their well-being processes that they have, or it can be somebody that's just really looking for an edge in terms of their career and looking to accelerate their progress and trying to avoid some of the barriers that tend to come up against you. So yeah, that's a good spread of probably what's going on at the moment. But it's enjoyable trying to balance it, that's for sure. But it's something I'm getting a little bit better at.
And where would you get the biggest buzz from working with an athlete? Is there one particular area or one particular maybe way that you get them thinking eventually that you're like, oh, that's why I do this. Like, that's why I really enjoy doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, it's very much, it's their show, like, and it's very much what they're doing is what they're passionate about. So first off, that's a massive advantage, and that's a massive positive. And number two, then the buzz I would get from that is, right, if I can actually get this person to really embrace what they do and thrive at what they do, that's a win for me. Like, that's a massive thing. If there's one or two things that I can support them with that are causing them a little bit of struggle or causing them to double take the ability that they have, I'll work through those things with them. But essentially, it's bringing it back to what makes them the real player or real person that they are, and like, what do they really value, and what drives them forward. Like, you're always coming back to those kind of things. And when you just see someone move from that, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's a question I asked 𝐒𝐿𝐴. She was on one of the early episodes of the podcast, and she's worked with a lot of different athletes in different sports. But I was just interested in the difference between GA players and other sports. Maybe if you look at individual sports, for example, is there any differences in the way they think, or maybe some of the common areas that they might struggle with between the two, GA and then some other sport?
That's a really good question. I think from my experience, so a GA player, while there is a huge investment individually to what they do and individually to their preparation in terms of their athletic development and their mental processes and their nutrition and their sleep and so on, there's that constant sense of purpose to what they do collectively, which I think acts as a real strengthening blanket nearly around you to always bring you up, even when you're experiencing some challenging times and things. There's always people around you that you can rely on. Whereas what I see for individual athletes is, even though you may have an immediate support network of your parents and your coach and maybe some support staff that are there, but it is very much, I won't say a one-man band or one-woman band. That's probably a bit too simplistic, but the reliance on yourself is is different, and developing that relationship with yourself where you're really comfortable in that environment can take a little bit of work as well, and is a small little bit different from what you would experience maybe in a team environment.
Yeah, I get you. And it's obviously easier to motivate yourself when you're going training with 30 other lads and you know you're going to have a bit of crack compared to getting up and doing a hard swim or a cycle or stuff like that on your own. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just admire it. So I just admire it so much. Like, I just admire rowers and athletes and um, whatever they do, but like the effort and work and guile that's needed for those sports, despite arguably not getting the recognition that they would deserve, and given what the capacity that they have and what they can produce. Yeah, so that's something that's always interests me, that I admire them quite a lot.
Yeah, Paul, that's been brilliant. Thanks a million for giving us your time today. I think people will get a lot from that, and especially players looking into the mental side of performance. Listen, well done on a brilliant Clare career, and best of luck with everything that is to come. I'm sure there's a lot of exciting times for you ahead in this space as well. So looking forward to following how you're getting
Thanks a million, Kevin. Thanks for the opportunity. And as I said, yeah, really like what you put together. So keep it going.